Hi there. Having recently reviewed Mission Impossible Fallout for this channel, I thought it'd be pretty fun to do a ranking of the 6 Mission Impossible films because, I don't know, why not? And also it's just kind of a good opportunity to kind of just go over them, give kind of my thoughts on each of them individually. Having just watched them all pretty recently, they're pretty fresh in my mind, so my ranking is pretty clear to me right now. So, having said all that, let's go. Easily the worst Mission Impossible film, I think the 6th best film in the franchise is Mission Impossible 2, which is kind of just a very flawed film. So it's directed by John Woo, who is a very stylish director and an action movie director who I do genuinely really like. And Mission Impossible 2 has all of his ridiculous, stylish, over-the-top moments. You get these images of saints on fire and cars spinning together and just these nuts images. You get loads of doves and pigeons because it's a John Woo film, so you have to have doves and pigeons. You have just over-the-top moments over-the-top moments. It just never stops. Of course, what really lets it down though is the terrible plot. It's really boring, the villain's kind of shit. Nothing really matters in this film, it doesn't really have the emotional stakes of some of the others. It is kind of just an amalgamation of cool, stylized stunts that don't really go anywhere. It certainly is the most generic and boring of the films, if not for the style that it has. And it's basically just a big action film without anything to really invest in. I think the plot is also overcomplicated and I don't think it makes much sense. Part of that is because the film is edited down from a much longer version because it was long and convoluted, but it just doesn't work. Mission Impossible 2 is certainly fun though, and I would definitely say even as the worst film in the franchise, it's still an absolute blast. And Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise and the film still works, and Mission Impossible 2 is just really fun, even if it is by far the worst film in the series because it's just the most poorly put together on a script level and on an action movie set piece level. There aren't that many fantastic action set pieces like there is in some of the other films. So it has its moments, but Mission Impossible 2, yeah, clearly last place. So number 5 is the original Mission Impossible, which some have rated much higher in their rankings than me, but I have to say I don't think this film particularly holds up. It's a film that is fantastic in a lot of ways. It certainly has these really nice ideas. It's certainly got this very noir-like visuals and it's got some decent action. And it's also the film in the series that most focuses on the spying rather than the action. There is a lot of spying in this film and a lot of discussion, a lot of talk and a lot of various levels of people trying to work out who's to be trusted. Now, obviously, the action here is fantastic. It actually has some very good action scenes when they come to it, although some of the CGI is very dated. But the fact this is more of a spy movie makes this kind of an oddity in the series, and I think that kind of improves it a lot. It makes it interesting, it makes it something different, it makes it fresh. And Mission Impossible is a really decent film. It has quite a few great moments, and the breaking into the CIA action set piece is still kind of held up as one of the best set pieces in the franchise and one of the most memorable set pieces in the franchise. I mean, loads of the films have basically copied its premise. Being the first film in the franchise, it certainly set up a lot of what we see in the later films, and it certainly has some originality and some flair to it. And Brian De Palma takes the cheesiness very seriously, and his direction is very distinct and very stylized. And I think overall Mission Impossible is certainly a strong film and certainly better than the immediate sequel. But I think as the franchise has gone on, it's pretty clear that this film is not the template the franchise really needed, and the franchise has really found its feet with better stories and better ideas. So it's solid and it's good and it's definitely worth watching, but the original Mission Impossible is definitely pretty low down on my list. So that's why it's number 5. And number 4, I've gone for Mission Impossible 3, which is the film directed by J.J. Abrams. And this, I'll be honest, is pretty marginal. It's only a little bit better than the original Mission Impossible. So number 4 and number 5 are pretty close. But I think this has to just edge it because the story here is just a lot better. The script is really nailed, and there's a lot of emotional stakes to the franchise for the first time. The Ethan Hunt character played by Tom Cruise really gets a lot of emotion, a lot of personal motivation in this film, which he doesn't really have in the previous 2 films, which are basically just action movies. This film really is a character movie in a lot of ways. Philip Seymour Hoffman also plays a fantastic villain here, and he definitely gives the standout villain performance of the earlier films. Philip Seymour Hoffman is brilliant here. Beyond that, the rest of the film is just really solid. It has decent action, it basically nails what it needs to be a Mission Impossible film. It certainly isn't innovative, it's certainly pretty bland. J.J. Abrams is certainly a bland director. There's not much here that really stands out in a visual sense. It's very much that late 2000s action movie look, a lot of orange, a lot of blues. It's very contrast heavy. It's not the most innovative film. It hasn't got action set pieces which are going to remain memorable for a long time in this franchise, but It's a film which just basically delivers everything you need to. It's a film which is the most even of the first three, and although it doesn't have any of the highs of the first film, it doesn't really have any of the lows of the second film. So it basically ends up in a nice middle ground where it's consistently solid, it's never bad, it's rarely great, but it is never bad, and that really counts for a lot. There's nothing here that sucks, and so as a result, Mission Impossible 3 basically is a good film, and it just works. So although there's nothing here that I really love, Mission Impossible 3 is my fourth choice because, yeah, it basically just delivers. At number 3, I'm going for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which is the fourth film in the franchise, and a film that I've heard cited as being the best in the franchise by a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, I understand that. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is the leanest film in the series. It is really efficiently done. It's a film that takes place over a couple of days, and every single action moment leads into the next. It's a film that is completely lean, efficient, well made. It's also the film that really is the first one to really tonally capture the series. It is a massive step up from the first three films, and I think for the rest of this list I'm only going to be talking about films that are really great. There's a lot of good films here, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol really just is so exciting. It's so tense, it's a breath of fresh air into the franchise. It really nails the balance of being cheesy but also being very serious. It really is the first film as well to have a ridiculous level of stunt work that we've come to expect from Tom Cruise. It has that infamous Tom Cruise climbing up the Burj Khalifa sequence, which is just extraordinary. And it also has other various high points throughout the series. I think the final act of Ghost Protocol is a bit of a mess, and I think certainly the transition from the second to third act is completely clunky, which is basically why I don't think it holds up as being one of the very best of the series. But the Burj Khalifa sequence is such a high point, and in general Ghost Protocol is magnificent. The director Brad Bird is best known for animation, but he really basically delivers here, and I think Ghost Protocol takes all of the good stuff from the first three films, discards the bad, and just comes together very well. It also has quite a nice story if you're going to really care about that, and although it's completely substanceless and completely silly, Ghost Protocol is a very exciting film and one of the better Mission Impossible films quite easily. At number 2 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which I think just edges out of Ghost Protocol. I think Rogue Nation is basically the exact same kind of tone and style set in Ghost Protocol. It takes that balance of cheesy and serious, it takes the characters, it takes all the stuff that Ghost Protocol kind of laid the groundwork for, and it does it on a bigger scale with bigger scope, and yet it maintains all the control. It isn't the lean efficiency of Ghost Protocol, but what it is that same style applied on a larger scale with more stakes, with more fun, and I think that just works. It certainly is one of the sillier films in the series, but it's also a film that has a lot of quite serious moments. It's a film which is relatively character focused, and it certainly has this whole thing to do with obsession on Ethan Hunt's part, and it certainly just works in general. I think Rogue Nation is very exciting as a film, and I think it's the sort of film that you just kind of get into because every single action scene is so well done, and Tom Cruise delivers some insane stunts. It's also a film with just a load of energy, and the director, Christopher McQuarrie, really is the first one in the franchise to bring together all of the previous films in a very nice way. He brings together the stylizations of the first one, he brings together the flair of the second, he brings the emotional character stakes of the third, and he brings the tone of the fourth, and he brings them together in this very nice manner. And so Mission Impossible Rogue Nation basically just beats the previous films because it just takes the best of each and composes them together in this beautiful symphony. And there's some fantastic moments. In particular, I think the final act is great, and I also really love the sequence in the Opera House. So Mission Impossible Rogue Nation certainly doesn't have anything as memorable as the Burj Khalifa bit in Ghost Protocol, but as a whole it's a more impressive piece of action cinema, and so Rogue Nation for me is just easily one of the best films in the series. Okay, so now number 1, and this is kind of what everyone was expecting. It's the latest one, Mission Impossible Fallout. Mission Impossible Fallout is by far the best film in the series. It's a clear step up from Rogue Nation. What it takes is everything that Rogue Nation did, which is basically take the first 4 films and mix them together and produce something that kind of perfected what the formula was. Takes that and then actually nails it. Rogue Nation has little cracks, little flaws where it doesn't quite work. It has moments and scenes that don't quite fit together. None of that in Fallout. All the scenes work. They all fit together, they all basically make sense, and it basically just has this whole great style to it. Not only does Fallout basically perfect the formula in Rogue Nation, it also ups it. It also has more stunts, more insane action. It also has more exciting action. It has a plot that's even bigger. It has a story that goes further. It, on every level, steps it up. It has more emotional stakes for Ethan Hunt. And I think it's the first film in the franchise that truly you could call a masterpiece. I don't think I'm going to necessarily go that far, but it's up there. It's really an action movie extravaganza. It's one of the best films in years of this kind of action. And I think it really does nail everything that it's kind of going for. Now, it has flaws, it has issues, but by far and away it beats the other films in the franchise because it's the first one that basically delivers on the story, on the characters, and on the action. And I think it has the best action in the series, undoubtedly. I think it has the best story in the series, undoubtedly. And as for characters, you might be able to argue another film, but I think you're also best in the series. I think there's no level that Fallout really doesn't work, and I think if we're going to really compare it to the other films in the series, I think Fallout just hands them all beaten. I understand the arguments you could make for Rogue Nation or Ghost Protocol if you happen to prefer the exciting action in those films, but for me Fallout just blew me away, and I think Mission Impossible Fallout is going to be seen as the best film in the franchise for a very long time. I've certainly seen so many glowing reviews of this film, and I certainly agree with them in the most part. I think it really works, I think it's very exciting, and I think that Mission Impossible Fallout is just easily the best film in the series. So that's how I rank the Mission Impossible films, and just to recap, that's Mission Impossible 2, then Mission Impossible, then Mission Impossible 3, the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, the Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and Mission Impossible Fallout at number 1. And that's what I think, that's how I'd rank them, and that's kind of how I feel. I feel like they just generally get better as they go on, with the exception of 2 being a step down from 1. I'd love to hear how you'd rank them, so please let me know in the comments. I'm really intrigued if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. I think generally speaking there's a kind of consensus in some senses on Mission Impossible, but I have certainly heard a lot of dissenting voices as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to hear more of my reviews or hear more of my list, you can subscribe. If you want to read more of my reviews or lists, you can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, link in the description. And thank you for watching.